the United States government. This is not a test. A nuclear attack was commenced against the United States. 15 nuclear bombs have detonated in several areas across the country. They include Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Denver, Detroit, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, New York, Pennsylvania, Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle.
My God. I think we're live, right? I believe we are, in fact, live. And thank God I had some mic issues earlier because when I went to pull my mic out, apparently I tore the fucking cord out of it and I was worried that I destroyed it, but I didn't. And then StreamYard decided that for some reason it was going to connect to the Oculus headset mic. I fucking hate Meta. Anyways, and Windows for that matter. Fuck you, Microsoft. But we got huge news this week, last week. Time is a malleable thing. Basically, Obsidian is making a new Fallout title, and Joshua Sawyer seems to be the one who's going to be directing it. And if you don't know who Joshua Sawyer is, Josh Sawyer is the guy who directed Fallout New Vegas, Pentiment, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to pull up his well, what do you call that? Portfolio in a little bit here to take a look at it because it's a pretty awesome portfolio and he's a phenomenal game director. Very excited. I know a lot of people are like, Obsidian's not the same company it was 16 years ago. No shit. But Joshua Sawyer is still a goated game director, and I imagine that under his guidance, it's going to be a really good game. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm just going to finish putting up this Instagram post so that people know to come take a look, and then we'll keep going. We'll keep moving. Let's see here. I'm also going to put up the chat. We're going to show this, and let's see here. Size, tall, font, medium. This isn't really working. Show comments on stage. There we go. Fixed it. Okay, that was weird. I am just extremely excited for this to come out, and we are going to actually look at the Bloomberg article and read it if we can. I would like to, but if Bloomberg's not going to let us read the article, then we're not going to read it because I'm not paying for it, because fuck Bloomberg. Got my delicious Diet Dr. Pepper. That's a lie. It's Diet Pepsi, but I wish it was Diet Dr. Pepper. Let's see here. Fallout, Obsidian, huge news. What should be my fourth hashtag? Let's do Fallout. New Vegas, and then we'll do. I guess we'll do Bethesda. Yeah, why not? We're only allowed to have 5 anyways. Who cares? And then I'm going to share that. Yeah, share. Done. And then I'm just going to send that to a bunch of people. Send to. Fallout and Fallout. Send separately. All right. Now let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of it. I'm going to open a new window for Chrome here. I'm going to open up, let's see here. New Fallout Bloomberg. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're not going to let me. Whoa. Oh, God. All right. Now I can pull up the thing and we will watch it that way. Let's see here. Share my screen. Share screen. We're going to share this one. Okay. So because I can't pull up the Bloomberg article, because you have to pay for it, and I'm not paying for Bloomberg, we're just going to read it off of Kotaku and just keep kind of going through the news, looking around. So basically, what had happened was Obsidian was going to be making Avowed 2. Avowed 1 didn't quite meet projections, and Microsoft in general is kind of fumbling the ball in every direction imaginable. There is no longer like it's it's it seems to be pretty bad there. But anyways, Obsidian was going to make Avowed 2 and that got canceled. And Avowed 1, I haven't played it because it's just not my type of game. It's like an action game, but it wants to be an RPG, and there's not romance, but there's also romance, but it's only with this blue guy who's kind of weird and not really like motivating in any way. And it's just such a the combat's apparently very good. Or I should say supposedly very good. Or maybe I should say apparently, because it should be apparent that the combat looks good and it supposedly feels very good. That's the correct way to use those words. Um, what I am not really sure about is whether or not a Avowed 2 would have been very successful. And apparently, according to Xbox, it wouldn't have been, or at least it wouldn't have been nearly as successful as um, another Fallout game. And to be quite frank, they are 100% right. A new Fallout game would be infinitely more successful. So I think they made the right choice with that. Um, okay, no, sorry. I like just got home from work, so I'm just trying to get everything together still. I apologize for this being a little wacky. Oh, I forgot I have to actually put this. All right, there we go. There we go. So, like I said, I can't read the Bloomberg article because Bloomberg wants my money, and I'm not going to give them my money because they're they're a very unethical company. But I don't like Kotaku either. But at least they let you read the article. So as Microsoft continues hacking away, or I should say, let's give credit where it's due. This is by Kenneth Shepard. As Microsoft continues hacking away at Xbox's game studios as part of thousands of layoffs, the teams that are still under the company's umbrella are finding out what's next. Obsidian, the developer behind Avowed and The Outer Worlds, is, according to a new report from Bloomberg, canceling a planned Avowed sequel and pivoting to a new Fallout game. It's something fans have long asked for, but it's also a surprise shift that wasn't originally part of the plan. But it's also a surprise shift that wasn't originally part of the plan. Okay. According to Bloomberg sources, studio design director Josh Sawyer will reportedly be leading the team on a new Fallout game, which will mark the studio's return to the post apocalyptic franchise after releasing the acclaimed Fallout New Vegas back in 2010. However, Bloomberg sources say the strategy is in flux and could change. Prior to this, Sawyer was reportedly directing an RPG that was similarly structurally and thematically to Fallout, but wasn't actually part of the Bethesda owned universe. A WARN Act notice confirms that 52 people have been laid off from the Irvine based studio's California office, roughly a quarter of Obsidian's overall headcount. The now canceled Avow sequel was apparently on track to be revealed within the next year, but did not fit into new Xbox CEO Asha Sharma's strategy. Presumably because Avowed / Pillars of Eternity is not considered a pillar franchise for the brand, and the original game apparently failed to meet sales expectations. The pivot to Fallout occurs as a TV adaptation of the franchise continues to be a hit on Amazon streaming platform, but with Fallout 5 nowhere in sight, as Bethesda continues working on the Elder Scrolls 6 indefinitely, forever and ever and ever and ever, and will never finish it. Xbox under Sharma is reportedly looking to speed up development of its core franchise, which also includes Halo. Bloomberg sources say that Bethesda will still be involved in this new Fallout project in some capacity, even as it continues working to ship Test 6, which is still years away from releasing. And then we get a whole bunch of people commenting on a Kotaku article. Okay. So the long and short of it is that Xbox wants Bethesda to do something with the Fallout IP, but they are not doing anything with the Fallout IP. And because they're not doing anything with the Fallout IP, they're having Obsidian do it. Now, I also understand that Bethesda is facing an absolute fuckload of layoffs. And I'm actually going to look that up right now. Let's see here. I also need to. Okay, good. I do have the things pulled up. We are going to see if I can't find the article about that. So let's look up Bethesda layoffs, because this is also going to be somewhat relevant. From IGN. The Elder Scrolls 6 will suffer because of Xbox layoffs, Bethesda staff say, fearing delays, crunch, and generational talent being replaced by contractors. Excellent news, guys. Everybody knows how good contractors are. You know, if you really want to get something done efficiently and at low cost, hire some contractors. What a great idea. That was sarcasm, in case you didn't pick up on it. This week's devastating Xbox layoffs will have a substantial and cascading effect on Bethesda's development of the Elder Scrolls 6. Multiple staff at the studio have told IGN. By the way, this is by Tom Phillips, and was updated on July 9th, 2026 at 7:31 a.m. So this is accurate as of 7:31 today, the day that this is being streamed. Speaking on condition of anonymity to protect their careers, current and former staff have told me that job losses across Bethesda Game Studios locations have removed more than 50 employees, including key high-performing people in the trenches, building the company's long-awaited Skyrim successor. This, in turn, they say, has shattered morale, raised the risk of future development crunch, and increased the likelihood that the game's already far-off completion date will be delayed. Such is the strength of feeling among the tight-knit Bethesda team that that on social media, photos have been shared of multiple makeshift celebrations of service memorials displayed within the company's offices in Dallas, Texas, and Rockville, Maryland. These features framed photographs of laid off coworkers arranged in the studio's common areas alongside bouquets of flowers. At least one of these delays has now been dismantled under orders of the company's HR department. Nobody hates people like HR, man. Nobody, there's no love like the hate of HR. Uh, So, yeah, it is unfortunate that so many people were laid off. Um, I don't know if these were also, it doesn't seem like this was anything part of Bethesda's enormous bureaucracy up top. Absolute, by the way, absolute dog shit on their behalf. I'm gonna make this larger too so people can actually fucking see what's on the screen here. Their loss will have a substantial and cascading effect on the game and morale of the studio, one Bethesda staff member told IGN. It's been a mix of every discipline programmers, artists, and designers, said another. One person who's been at the company since Morrowind was cut. That's tough. Definitely because they were paying that guy a lot of money and they were like, or I shouldn't say guy, uh, that person was making probably a lot of money at the studio. And they're like, we don't want to pay you to make a good game. We hate you and we hate our customers, which is, of course, Bethesda, Xbox is Microsoft's motto. We hate our customers. On social media, the Bethesda Game Studio Union has highlighted a post on the Xbox player voice feedback platform, which seeks to raise wider awareness of the job losses and demonstrate to Microsoft that fans are unhappy with the scale of layoffs now associated with their hobby. With 2,588 updates, it is now in the top 20 Xbox user suggestions on the site, which Microsoft draws from to enact fan feedback on its console platform. I'm going to just take a wild guess and say that Xbox doesn't actually give a shit about what anybody thinks, as long as the money's coming in. Layoffs are part of the 1,600 staff who lost their jobs this week as part of the brutal downsizing of its business under recently installed CEO Asha Sharma. In an email sent to staff, Sharma called it the most significant restructure in Xbox history, insisting Microsoft's gaming business is not healthy. Overall, Xbox is losing about 1/5 of its staff as part of Sharma's push for growth. Little the 2018 Elder Scrolls 6 teaser. Woo! A further 1,600 staff will depart the company over the course of this year as Xbox looks to become a leaner operation focused more fully on its biggest brands such as Halo, Forza, Fallout, and yes, the Elder Scrolls. It's not coming out. It's never coming out. Bethesda will probably no longer exist by the time Elder Scrolls 6 would come out, okay? I'm sorry, this game's not going to exist. It's just not. We are already running a tight ship and are worried about this delaying the game. In an email to Bethesda staff sent following Sharma's memo, Bethesda boss Jill Braff said the layoffs and change in strategy reflect the realities of our industry and business and our responsibility to ensure Bethesda is operating from a more stable foundation. So, in order to have a stable foundation, you get rid of the fucking bedrock of it, which is developers and not the, bloated bureaucracy. I'm guessing that Bethesda was in charge of deciding who they laid off here. Um, I it I don't think anywhere in here it specifically says who is in charge of those layoffs, but I'm guessing it was Bethesda, and obviously Bethesda is a boys club of Todd Howard and whoever Todd Howard likes. So whoever is basically just a high up in the bureaucratic structure that it has is not going to get laid off, and the people who are going to get laid off are just going to be people who, you know, they just don't want to pay anymore, or they feel aren't really that important to them. But I really, really don't think that this is going to help them in any way, shape, or form. If they wanted to be more efficient, they should cut the fat, and the fat is 100% at the top with Bethesda. everybody who's worked there and left the company said all the fat is at the top, none of it is at the bottom. It's way too lean at the bottom, and it's way too fat at the top. And of course, Bethesda, being the fucking shit company that it is trimming fat from the bottom. And so the foundation is going to get worse and worse. Not good. Not good. To be successful in the future, we need to change course, Braff continued. I'm going to guess that it was Bethesda who did this. In an email to Bethesda staff sent following Sharma's memo, Bethesda boss Jill Braff said the layoffs and change in strategy reflect the realities of our industry and business and our responsibility to ensure Bethesda is operating from a more stable foundation. I do think there's two ways of looking at what she's saying here, and I'm going to say she, because I've never met a guy named Jill. Could be wrong. But I'm guessing that to her, or they, could be they. I don't mean to misgender you, Jill Braff, despite the fact that you're probably an evil person making these decisions. The idea of operating from a more stable foundation is probably referring to the fact that Bethesda is just overspending. And so their idea to reduce spending is, again, just cut valuable employees and not trim the fat from the top, because, you don't trim the fat from the top when all you do is just like straight up nepotism and don't make games or anything. I'm going to keep reading. To be successful in the future, we need to change course, Braff continued. We must strengthen our business, return to sustainable growth, and ensure we can continue investing in our franchises and our players. I know that doesn't make a day like today any easier. In order to do this, Braff said, Bethesda teams would now work more closely together and focus on the company's strongest franchises in order to better serve our player and Bethesda as a whole. So I'm going to look this up real fast and see if Jill Braff is technically employed by Bethesda or if they're employed by Xbox. Because when they say Bethesda boss, that might be referring, and I'm not a huge guy in the gaming industry, that could be referring to, it's their handler. Still Braff employed by Xbox or Bethesda. Okay, so she's technically both. And Google is telling me that she goes by she. So I am not evil. Let's see here. I know that doesn't make a day like today any easier. In order to do this, Braff said Bethesda teams would now work more closely together and focus on the company's strongest franchises in order to better serve our players and Bethesda as a whole. In order to do that, you have to release a fucking game. Make a goddamn game. IGN has already explored how the changes at Bethesda mean focusing on big hitters such as the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, leaving Starfield potentially out in the cold. Yeah. Starfield was a big flop. I get why Xbox doesn't want them focusing on that. With Microsoft planning to sell or close Arcane Lion, Marvel's Blade may fall by the wayside or be published elsewhere. The Elder Scrolls Online developers, ZeniMax Online Studios, has already signaled content roadmap changes with fewer staff following the layoffs. Meanwhile, id Software, developer of the Doom games, has suffered significant cuts. Machine Games has survived the call, with a new Wolfenstein game pretty much an open secret at this point. But it's looking increasingly unlikely that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle will get the sequel it teased at the end of the game. And as for the Elder Scrolls 6, while it remains one of the most anticipated games on Xbox's upcoming lineup, perhaps the most anticipated, its development is also the source of concern too. There is a fear, Quote, there is a fear that we are going to be replaced by cheaper contracted labor, or we will hire folks to replace them that will need to be onboarded. Our tools are proprietary. Other devs aren't going to know how they work, resulting in more delays, and we'll need to crunch to make up the time, one Bethesda developer told IGN. We've all been very excited and hyped for Test 6, and this has had a crushing effect on morale, said another staff member. Quote, we were already running a tight ship and are worried about this delaying the game, though a final release date was not yet chosen as far as we know, unquote. This week it was reported that The Elder Scrolls 6 is still at least 2 years away from launch, despite the fact it was originally announced some 8 years ago. Bethesda released Starfield in the meantime, of course, but the long wait for a Skyrim follow up has been a frustrating one for fans, with the franchise already skipping one full console generation in terms of mainline releases. It seems like the company wants to make up the loss in talent with outsourcers, one staff member said, pointing to a similar situation in the studio's decimated quality assurance department, where work formerly undertaken by in house employees has now been taken up by overseas staff at development outsourcing firm Keywords. I've heard from my colleagues that they're already being asked to train new contractors. I have no idea how they'll continue updating Fallout 76 without hiring an external studio. Let's see here. You don't get to read. And now I don't. I'm going to assume. So this is just a. Okay, this is a continuation of the article. You don't get to retire off your work at Xbox. Your time ends when you quit or are laid off. One staff member said they've been told that colleagues from the Elder Scrolls Online Studios, ZeniMax Online Studios, will now fill in gaps on the Elder Scrolls 6's development team, though it's unclear how this will be managed when publicly available layoff notices show that ZOS itself has been massively downsized, with 212 staff laid off. Other teams in the ZeniMax family have also been gutted. Game Developer has reported that 136 of 185, oh my God, full-time employees were laid off from id Software. That's insane. 136 of 185 full-time employees were laid off from id Software. Dog, they're finished. Like that's insane. Outside Bethesda, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier has said that Obsidian Entertainment has laid off a quarter of its staff. That was at 25 out of 100 number that we read earlier. It has now been put to work on a new Fallout game, which Bethesda is said to be helping out with. That bodes terribly poorly to me that Bethesda is going to be helping to make this Fallout game. I'm assuming that their version of helping, and I hope this is the case, is that they already know what they want to do for Fallout 5, and they already have inklings of what's going to happen in Fallout Season 3 and going on. And they're like, we do not need them narratively mucking that up. Because obviously, like, Fallout New Vegas in the West posed a lot of problems for them to try and figure out how they would handle a sequel. I've already made my peace with how a sequel should be handled in a game that has a multiple choice system like that, which is that you select a fucking ending, right? And then you go with that ending. And then every decision that you make from there on out is determined off of that ending. That's how you make a sequel to a game like that. Unfortunately, Bethesda's a bunch of pussies and can't handle the idea that, you're supposed to do that with these RPGs. If you're making sequels, that's just naturally what you have to do. So instead, they made Fallout Season 2 and basically just ignored that there was ever events that took place in the Mojave, because I guess the Enclave are just omniscient and omnipotent and can do whatever they want at any moment in time. And they've been planning this all from the very start. Ooh, such a stupid storyline. But I will continue. I think the specter of layoffs is something we will face in perpetuity until we unionize, one Bethesda staff member said. Another revealed that survivors were told they were now safe from Sharma's further 1,600 cuts this year, though there's still a feeling of deep concern that these won't be the end of Xbox's plan to downsize in future. I would not believe a word of that if I were them, and if I were at Bethesda right now, I would be looking for another job as quickly as possible. Because you are not safe. You are not safe at all. The survivors were told they're safe from those next blah blah blah. The survivors were told they're safe from those next 1,600, but it's not entirely reassuring. A laid off staff member concluded, even if that's true, who's to say there's not another 1,600 next year after that? It's had the chilling effect of realizing you don't get to retire off your work at Xbox. Your time ends when you quit or are laid off. That's it. I'm assuming that this person, because of this perspective that they're offering, is probably somebody who's been there for quite a while. Um, and this was by Tom Phillips. So that is basically the two articles that I really wanted to, or the two pieces of news that I really wanted to dig into. So, um, shit, I need to fix this, man. Man, it's all messed up. There we go. I guess now it's time for my opinions. Number one, I'm super happy that we are getting another Fallout game. I cannot express how happy I am that we are, in fact, getting another Fallout game. Thank God it's about fucking time, you know? At the same time, it's obviously very sad that so many people have been laid off, although I think these layoffs were, you know, uh, unfortunately at Xbox, it's inevitable. When you work for these tech companies, these layoffs are absolutely inevitable because tech companies don't actually really make anything, right? Or at least these developers aren't. When you drag out your releases like this and you don't make anything for years and years and years, and you're not releasing anything, everything that you do from that point out, all the value that you have, what your company is worth, your income, all of it is like this weird, speculative, vague area. And when that's the case, you cannot do anything without it being an extremely big gamble. And eventually, I mean, and any type of speculative market like that is 100% going to be a giant house of cards. And every time that that house of cards comes close to toppling, they immediately go to layoffs to try and keep, the money. And I really, really do not understand why it takes, and maybe someone could explain this to me. Maybe I'm just like an idiot. I do not understand why a game like Skyrim was able to be made by roughly 100 people in 2011 with, or rather released in 2011. It was developed between 2008 and 2011. Like that was its real development cycle before it was like, obviously before Fallout 3 released, it was like in pre-development. But um I don't understand how that game, and I get that there's crunch, but there's always crunch. So crunch doesn't get to count as a factor. Okay. I do not understand how 100 people can make Skyrim, but then like a team of like 300 people can make Starfield. And it took them what, 3 years to make Skyrim, and it took what, 7 years to make Starfield. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why does it take you so long to make a game? How is it that Obsidian could make Fallout New Vegas in 18 months, but it takes you, what is it? Let's see here. Fallout 4 released in 2015. It's now 2026. It's been 11 years that Test 6 has been in pre-development, right? And then I guess, and this is the thing that I'm unclear about. Were they always working on the Elder Scrolls 6? Like, how long has the Elder Scrolls 6 actually been in full development? Or were all those resources going to Starfield? And even then, why did it take you twice as long to make Starfield, an objectively, like, just game that feels so much smaller in its scope? than Skyrim, which is a world that like just has so much fucking shit in it to go around and do. I'm not going to argue that there's like, there's a lot of depth to that, but Starfield doesn't really have any depth either. There's like no, I mean, asking for depth in a Bethesda game is, you know, not necessarily the people. Bethesda's not the people you want to ask for depth, right? So why is it like why does it take you so long to do that? And I guess the answer is because Bethesda has grown significantly as a company since then, and they made the decision that Todd Howard would I guess all the decisions would be finalized with him. So he's the CEO of the company, but he's still making like small time decisions for the direction of games, which I don't get. I like why would you do that? And then, like I said earlier, there's this enormous fat bureaucratic structure at Bethesda that just prevents them from doing anything productive. So like what the hell is going on? It genuinely, I just don't fucking get it. How any of that works at all. It doesn't make sense. So um I I just it's so befuddling. And I can't believe that Bethesda is still around as a company. Although I shouldn't be surprised because they've been milking Fallout 76 for God knows how long, and obviously, they make money off of Elder Scrolls Online too, which is is a game, and it's a fun game. Last time I played it, which was, it was years ago, but when I did last play it, it was fun. It's just a bunch of my friends stopped playing it, and it's not nearly as fun solo. And Elder Scrolls are not really my jam in the same way that Fallout is. So, with that in mind, I am super happy that Xbox is lighting a fire under Bethesda's ass and saying, "Look, you need to like make a fucking game." And now Obsidian is making a Fallout game, and allegedly, according to Bloomberg sources, Joshua Sawyer is going to be making that game, which is good news. I'm so happy to hear that. Um, Josh Sawyer uh, is an excellent guy, and we'll just look up real fast here what his portfolio looks like. The Josh Sawyer game director portfolio. Career games. Okay, let's see here. Project director and lead designer on Fallout New Vegas. Okay, and then let's see here. Pillars of Eternity, project director. Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, project director. And Pentiment, game and narrative director, 2022. So he's been the director on at least 4 different games, and then narrative designer, project director, and narrative designer on Honest Hearts, narrative designer and lead systems designer on Dead Money, and then lead systems designer and narrative designer on Old World Blues and Lonesome Road. Those are like incredible, just so cool, so good. He's an excellent game developer and an amazing director. He does an incredible job. He knows what people want. He knows how to get it done. So I see absolutely no reason why people should not be extremely hyped for this to be a thing. And there are so many people that I see now who are like, actually, Obsidian bad. Obsidian bad, actually. They made games that I didn't like. Oh, they made games you didn't like. So let's look up. games they've released since let's see here, since Fallout New Vegas. So let's just look up Obsidian Entertainment, and we'll see what they've been up to for the last 16 years. Let's skip. Let's see here. Okay, that's not going to work. We know what games they've made. I forget who the director for Avowed was, so I'm going to look that up real fast. Avowed director. Kerry Patel. That is according to Gemini. Kerry Patel, the director behind Avowed. Avowed director Kerry Patel leaves Obsidian. Project director. Okay. So it is Kerry Patel, 100%. All right, very good. So the reason that I think it's absolutely stupid for people to cry the way that they are about this is very simple, and it is that effectively you had Kerry Patel make Avowed, and Avowed was an action game, not an RPG. It had RPG elements, but it was first and foremost an action game. You also had the Outer Worlds, and Outer Worlds was a very different game from Fallout. Tim Kaine directed that. Tim Kaine created Fallout. He doesn't like to be credited with the creation of Fallout because the creation of Fallout was like the brainchild of what was ultimately 30 different people putting things together. And it was really rested on the shoulders creatively of a small handful of people, and none of them can individually be credited with the true creation of Fallout. It was a big team effort. Tim Kaine has said many times he does not want to work on another Fallout sequel. He's not interested. He did that with Fallout 2, and it sucked. And he left. He left Interplay / Black Isle Studios. He didn't want to do it anymore. And I totally understand and respect that. He wants to make his own thing. He wants to make something new. He wants to do new stuff. And that's wonderful. Outer Worlds was not my cup of tea, but it isn't it's not something that doesn't mean that inherently what they're going to do next is going to be bad. It's a different director. Josh Sawyer knows what Fallout fans want. He understands what people have criticized the last few games for. He understands that people want what people want out of Fallout narratively is what New Vegas had and not what Fallout 4 did. He also understands that people really, 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 really like what Fallout 4 did in terms of the scavenging and crafting systems. And to me, if you marry Fallout New Vegas's narrative with Fallout 4's crafting system, that is like, and when I say Fallout New Vegas' narrative, I don't mean like just take the story from Fallout New Vegas but put Fallout 4 crafting in it. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is you have a game that has a complex, non-linear narrative structure, which means that you can effectively do the game in almost any order. Obviously, the acts are still structured in such a way where you can only do, you have to, before you can start the next set of quests for an act, you have to finish the first act. or the one that comes before it. So that's not what I mean. But you have a story which is able to be influenced by the player to a degree that feels meaningful. And you also have a story that a lot of people were very intrigued by and invested in because the story allowed you to place your own motivations in it as the player and not have this weird thing that's like it's forced on you as a background, but you don't care. As a player, you don't care, but your character supposedly really cares, but you don't care. And then the game never really does anything to really show how much you care, except for when your voice acted character acts like he really cares. But it creates this weird cognitive dissonance between the actions that the player are taking versus how the in game character perceives the importance of the issue. That's not good. That's actually, and I know this is a bold take, but I think that's bad, actually. Put me up on a cross, Chief. I know. A crazy thing to say, but maybe in an RPG, you shouldn't try and railroad the player into like, one thing. Um, Even something like, and I'm thinking of like, okay, Baldur's Gate 3, you could choose origin characters. And in the case of, I'm going to use the Dark Urge as an example. You know, just because you're playing an origin character does not mean that you're railroaded into feeling a certain way about your past. When you play as the origin character, they give you the choices to role play as that character and decide how you think that character thinks. You get to be that character and you get to make decisions for that character and you get to think for that character. And in Fallout 4, they don't really let you think for the character, right? Everything that you do is a yes or no. Um, and I'm sorry, it's a yes or later. You do not get to say no in Fallout 4, and there are no consequences to saying no. Turning down or rejecting a quest from a settlement does not mean that suddenly that settlement gets bodied. It just means that you'll come back later to defend it eventually. You cannot tell anyone no, and there's very little consequence for your choices in that game. Despite that, the game also wants you to believe that you really care about your wife that you knew for, or your husband that you knew for all of about, you know, 5 minutes. And you really care about this baby who hasn't spoken a word, and you've also known as the player for all of about 5 minutes, and you're told, you really care about this. No, I don't. And then people are like, well, you're supposed to role play like you care. Am I? Because the fucking game doesn't let me do that. You know, the game wants you to run around and play settlement builder, but meanwhile, I'm trying to hunt down my fucking, spouse's killer. Which one is it? Do I really care or do I not care? And the game can't make up its mind. I shouldn't say the game can't make up its mind. Fucking Emil Pagliarillo couldn't make up his mind because he didn't care. His words, not mine. Of course, referencing the famous paper airplanes quote where he decides that, when asked, yeah, why did you do such a shit job on Fallout 4's narrative? Like, why does Fallout 4's story suck so much ass? He basically answered, because some players don't care, so I don't care. So I just shit it out. Like, come on, dude. And this again is why I just cannot get over the fact I just cannot take Bethesda seriously as a company, as a developer, or feel like the people at the top of that studio actually give a shit about the games that they make is because somehow Emil got to be the story director on Fallout 4, shit the bed so unbelievably hard that it's like the most polarized. It's Fallout 4 is more polarizing than Fallout 76 is. That's fucking insane. And why is that? Why is Fallout 4 more polarizing than Fallout 76? Because Fallout 76 is an MMO, not an RPG, and it doesn't suck 6 tons of ass anymore. That doesn't make it great necessarily. I just want to remind people of that. But Fallout 4 shit the bed because its fucking narrative was so bad. So if you want to get invested, it's very difficult to become narratively invested in the game because the game doesn't fucking take itself seriously ever. Ever. It never, ever, 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 ever takes itself seriously. The character that you're playing, Nate or Nora, will sometimes take themselves seriously, but the game doesn't take them seriously because the game is telling you to go, like, you have Preston Garvey who walks up to you, and Preston Garvey's like, I need you to build 16 cities, 16 towns. And you're like, or I'm sorry, settlements. Why? And then the game is like, well, because years before you stepped out here, there was actually something interesting going on that was cool. But then these boogeymen, the Institute, came out and they were like, I no. So then they were terrorists and they scared everybody, and now no one wants to do anything. Oh, and the Minuteman general was a piece of shit and he didn't want to do anything either. Why couldn't we explore that, Bethesda? Why did we have to be a pre-war idiot who has a baby and then like the baby gets stolen and the whole game is like, you really care about this baby? And I'm like, no, I don't. I knew the baby for all of 5 minutes. I just don't give a shit about any of this. And you're not really giving me a reason to give a shit about any of this. Why should I care? And then like halfway through the game is like, plot twist, actually is all grown up. And he's an old man. And he's evil and he's stupid. And that's another thing. Like, okay, the Institute. The difference between the Institute and the Legion, because both are like the de facto evil factions of the game, is that in one of them, New Vegas, the Legion has motivations for what they're doing that are explained through their philosophy, what they think, why they're doing what they're doing, why Caesar has it structured the way that he does. He has principles, virtues, and beliefs, and the way that he acts is based off these principles, virtues, and beliefs. And the people who are following him have their own virtues, principles, and beliefs, and this is why they follow him. There's a level of consistency there that can be followed and make sense. And where there are inconsistencies, these are explored as character faults, either indirectly or directly. For instance, Caesar has the auto dock in his medical tent, or has the auto dock in his personal tent. That doesn't make any sense for why he has it, but the reason that he's allowed to have it is because he's a god amongst men. Nobody else can have that. Why do you have guns if you don't believe that you should have guns? Well, because we're fighting the NCR. There are internal contradictions within the Legion, but these aren't treated as nothing burgers. They are actually explored. And that's important because it lets the player know that it makes the world feel more immersive when you can actually find out why something is the way that it is. And it doesn't feel like a thoughtless oversight. Whereas when you talk about the Institute from Fallout 4, Sean was saying something along the lines of, real fast, I want to say this. It's fucking bullshit that you don't get to name the fucking baby. All right, why do I not get to name the fucking baby? It's got to be Sean, loser ass Sean. Okay. When you are talking about the Institute, there are so many ridiculous different things that he is always saying about them that just don't make any fucking sense, that the game expects you to just treat them seriously. But like, why? Why should I take them seriously? You don't take them seriously. They don't take themselves seriously. Like, they keep talking about, how the wasteland has nothing to fear from them, but like, you literally acted as terrorists. You are actively trying to destroy their surface. Like, you are actively trying to destroy surface civilization because you're afraid that somebody with power on top might come after you, even though you're allegedly minding your own business, but you're not because you're kidnapping people and replacing them with synths. But the synths are just like real people, but they're not actually people, and they should be controlled by you. But they're like real people, except when they start acting like real people, you don't like that. Okay, can we talk about that? No. There's no room. And so, like, you could say, as a counter argument to everything that I've just pointed out, you could argue that, well, that's kind of the genius of the Institute, right? Is that it's sort of like a reflection of our real world where we do have governments that are not rational actors, right? The Institute is not a rational actor. They are not acting rationally. They clearly do not have any core set of principles or values. They are just simply these power hungry freaks, and they will say or do anything to justify that. They're like that's like the Israeli government, that's like the American government, that's the Chinese government, that is the Russian government, that is like every superpower in the world's government. Although the Chinese government is far more of a rational actor than any Western power is. Um, Europe every year is less and less of a rational actor. They're not doing things that make sense or are that come off from a founding principle, right? Or based off of, you know, logically, if we want this outcome, how do we achieve that? Which is if we want to prevent, economic global collapse or global economic collapse, whatever order you say that in, then we should take these actions. But they don't care. They just do whatever they want and then just keep trying to fit the world into this, they keep trying to shove the circle into the fucking square hole and it doesn't fucking fit. And they can't, for the life of them, figure out why that is. Why doesn't it fucking fit? Um, but if that was Fallout 4's goal, was to make that analogy, then why did they not explore it at all in any way, shape, or form? Why can you not explore those internal contradictions inside the Institute? You can talk to other people and they're going to be like, yeah, Sean's an idiot. We don't like him. Okay, why is he leading you? Like, you can just like kill him, right? Like, I can kill him right now with like a fucking sawed off shotgun, dude. It's not hard. If you feel like he's leading you to ruin, why don't you do something about it? Again, because reasons. Why we don't get to know. They're not going to tell us, and even if they did tell us, it still wouldn't make any sense because, like Emil said himself, he didn't care, and that's really unfortunate that Emil didn't give a shit. So he just like shat out the story of Fallout 4 because the Institute was set up in an interesting way in Fallout 3, and so was the Railroad. And then Emil came along and was like, sometimes people don't care about my story. Fuck you. I'm sure Emil also, I just want to say this. I'm sure Emil is a pleasant person in his interpersonal relationships. I can't imagine that he's like some kind of demon. However, I'm not his friend. I'm somebody who gave Bethesda money for a game that I thought was going to be good, and it turned out to be fucking like have a terrible story attached to it. That guy fucking again shit out because he didn't care. Okay, so I'm allowed to fucking say this shit, and then considering that like he has no redemption arc with Starfield because he was the goddamn director of Starfield, and then it turns out, oh yeah, Starfield was a steaming pile of shit too. What happens when you take an entire game and basically treat it like none of it matters? Oh, you make Starfield. Okay, very cool. I cannot fathom how or why they thought it was okay to be like, yeah, this guy said he doesn't give a shit about our game. He said, sometimes some players don't care. So, anyways, I'm gonna make a shit game. I'm gonna just not care either. I'm not gonna put any thought or care into my job. And then they were like, yeah, that guy should direct our next game. Are you out of your fucking mind? That's like nepotism 101. Holy shit. So, yeah, I have no faith in Bethesda to be able to make a good game. I imagine this is why Elder Scrolls 6 is taking so long to make, is because they're dealing with all of this internal fucking bullshit about having a guy who doesn't give a shit about his job because sometimes people don't like what I do. So, I don't want to try. It's not worth my time or effort. And then you do that, and you have that guy, and you just keep letting him do stuff, and he's making terrible decisions, and then you've got to go back and fix those decisions. But then you have to go to Todd and be like, "Hey, Todd, are we allowed to fix this?" And then Todd goes, "Let me think about it." Then he forgets because he's the goddamn CEO of Bethesda. And then you go back to him and you're like, "Dude, please, can we do something about this?" And it's like a month later, and you're like, "Oh, I forgot I had to make a decision about," like, I cannot imagine how fucking frustrating it must be to work at Bethesda. The writing has been on the walls since Fallout 76. I like it's a ship that's sinking. And either Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be the life preserver of that sinking ship, or it is going to be like the moment where the Titanic snaps in half, you know? Starfield was the iceberg. It was an easily avoidable, enormous mistake, and they sailed straight into it and said, "Fuck it, I don't care." Sailed right into that iceberg, and now Elder Scrolls 6 is them trying to figure out whether or not they should uh, sink or swim. Basically, will everybody on that ship drown? Who knows? I want to see. I'm interested in Elder Scrolls 6, and if they actually make a good RPG, then I'll be pretty excited about that. But um, I can't imagine that what they're going to do is really going to be all that good with it because it's been so long, and it kind of feels like in general when a game takes fucking forever for a developer to make, it's just gonna like the longer it takes, the worse it is. And there are few instances where that's the case, but it's like, if you are spending 8 years making a game and you have not released any of it to the public, that's not a good sign. That means you have spent 8 years doing things that nobody thinks can be seen. Like, the public must avert thine eyes from the tragedy that we have designed. They are not allowed to see. That doesn't bode well to me. I don't think that should bode well to anybody. That should be, like a sign of a fucking apocalypse for you. You've spent 8 years basically twiddling your thumbs at that point. Not good. Not good at all for them. And so now, of course, Fallout falls into Obsidian's lap because they can't fucking do anything with it because they're so tied up with Elder Scrolls 6 and can't produce a game to save their fucking lives. Literally. Um, Avowed 2 getting canceled, obviously, I feel bad for all the people who wanted that game really badly, who, really liked Avowed and were interested. That doesn't necessarily mean that we'll never get a second Avowed. It's very possible that in the future we will. I'm not going to just like say it's impossible, but I feel bad for people who are interested in that. And of course, I do feel bad for the 25 people at Obsidian that were laid off as a result. And the fact that you're basically going to have 75 people making that game, though I think maybe that might make it a banger, right? Like, oh, I hate to say it, but Obsidian fucking cooks under pressure, dude. When they are under pressure, they make insane games. And I know everybody's going to say, they're not the same studio. They're not the same studio. It's been 16 years. They're not the same studio. They weren't the same studio when they made Fallout New Vegas from KOTOR. People left and new people joined. They weren't the same studio, but you know what? They made a fucking awesome game. All right. Josh Sawyer didn't make KOTOR 2. All right. I can't remember who the director of KOTOR 2 was, but it was still a fucking Obsidian game. The people at Obsidian are still good developers. Outer Worlds still had a concept. It followed through on that concept. It did a thing. You cannot like that concept. You can not like the game that came out, but to act as if though it was like a terrible game is just, I honestly like immature and just like, forehead behavior. Like, use your fucking brain, dude. Just because you don't like something does not mean that it's inherently bad. I did not like the Outer Worlds. I thought this beginning was way too slow, and the options that I was presented with at the beginning were really boring. And I never got interested. And as I learned later on from other people telling me about the game, if I had pushed through that part, I would have fucking hated the game. And I'm glad I didn't because it would have been a waste of my time. It was on Game Pass, so I didn't have to shell out when was it, like 40? Was Outer Worlds when it came out $40? I don't remember. But I do remember I got it on Game Pass, and I played it for about 8 hours, and I set the game down, and I said, "This isn't for me." And it wasn't a bad game, just not for me. And that's okay. It's okay for a game to not be for you. But that doesn't mean that Obsidian lost the sauce. Avowed had an excellent combat system. It just narratively wasn't great. But guess what? It wasn't an RPG. It was an action game. And that wasn't Carrie Patel's priority with it. She wasn't trying to have a game, write the next great American novel. Like Fallout New Vegas was them trying to make the great American novel because that's what they set out to do. That's what they wanted to do. Tim Kane's whole thing has always been, I want to have a game that's filled with choice and consequence. When you make a decision, there should be a causal relation with something that comes next. And what comes next should differ depending on the choices you make, because that's how cause and effect work. Okay, if I have a cup of ice in one hand and a fucking metal tub of burning coals, okay, if I stick my hand in the cup of ice, it's gonna be cold. And if I stick my hand in the burning fucking pit of fire, it's gonna burn my hand. Okay, that makes fucking sense. And that's Tim Kane's philosophy when he's making a game. If you stick your hand in the ice, it's gonna be cold. Put your hand in the fire, it's gonna be fucking hot. Okay, make your decision. With other games like Fallout 4, that's not the case. You can do fucking anything in that. If you stick your hand in the fire, it's going to be lukewarm. If you stick your hand in the ice, it's going to be lukewarm. It doesn't matter. And that's just like, that's not what Fallout was. Fallout was intentionally designed to be all about choice and consequence, because that's what it was. And then Fallout 2, much the same thing. If you make choices, guess what? There are like things happen as a result of those decisions. If you make bad choices, bad things will happen. If you make good choices, good things will happen. If you role play a good character and you do good things, people will like you, and good things will happen, and yada yada yada. If you role play an evil character, bad things will happen. Obsidian and Josh Sawyer specifically, and if I God, who is the fuck? I gotta look this up. I cannot forget this guy's name. Lead writer for Fallout New Vegas. John Gonzalez. John Gonzalez did an amazing job writing Fallout New Vegas and making sure, and I know that there are other writers. The people that worked on New Vegas and did the writing for it understood the assignment that Fallout is supposed to be a non-linear game, that Fallout is quintessentially about choice and consequence. And when you do that, you're going to have a good Fallout game because people are allowed to explore options. They knew that, and they made an awesome game because of that. I cannot imagine that Joshua Sawyer is going to come back 16 years later and say, actually, I'm going to make a Fallout game with no choice and consequence at all. That would be absurd, right? So I think the fact that Josh Sawyer is directing it is a very, very, very good sign. And it means that whoever is in charge of this project and like hiring the right people to get it done and making sure that, they know what's happening is just strictly a good thing. That is only to me a good sign. Like I said, yes, I feel bad for the people that were laid off. Yes, I know that that's not good. Um, but man, at a certain point, we just got to focus on the fact that there's a new Fallout game that's going to be made. Um, I'm hoping we haven't gotten confirmation on what type of game it will be. I'm hoping it's an RPG if they got Josh Sawyer to do it again, unless they're doing it for the name recognition, which would be really stupid. Because like there was not many, like in our little cult of personality, we love Joshua Sawyer, but that's more because of what he did and not who he is, right? Like because we really like New Vegas, not because we think that, Josh Sawyer is like the messiah or he's just like some awesome person. Like, no, he's a good game director. He made good games. So to me, that bodes well. I'm hoping that whoever is the writer is going to be somebody who's at least experienced with nonlinear games, who is experienced with divergent stories, who understands that like you need to have branching paths. And I'm really looking forward to see what this game is going to be about. It's it's just very exciting. It almost doesn't feel real, you know? It's like I just it's a strange feeling to be excited about it because I don't know, it just doesn't feel real. Like, oh, we're getting a new Fallout game after 11 years. We're going to get another Fallout game. I'm not counting Fallout 76 because Fallout 76 was not an RPG, it was an MMO. And even when they added quote unquote RPG elements into the game, they barely did. And once again, the choices were stick your hand in the fire or stick your hand on the ice, and it will still ultimately feel lukewarm no matter what. There's no consequence. And to make it very clear, if there is no consequence to what you are to the choice that you make, then you did not have a choice, right? That's how cause and effect work. If the effect was always going to be the same, then the cause was always the same. And if the cause was always the same, you did not get to choose the cause. You got to select a different dialogue option, but you never got to actually make a real choice that meaningfully affected the outcome. And that is by far and away the most important thing to consider when you're talking about a game that is all about choice and consequence. Outside of that, I don't really have much to say else other than I really think that people should give Obsidian a chance to make this game. Um, it's really sad that all Obsidian is really known for anymore is like they made Fallout New Vegas. It was an awesome game. Then they made Outer Worlds, a game that a lot of people didn't care for, and then they made Avowed, which was reached a very niche audience. So they made New Vegas and it was a breakout success. It was like, it's like hailed as one of the best RPGs ever. And then people are like, oh my God, Obsidian makes the best RPGs ever. And then they go back to play and it turns out like, no, Obsidian doesn't actually make insanely massive, like AAA size games all the time. And it turns out, no, they don't actually make all the world's best RPGs. And it turns out, no, actually, whoever is directing the game sometimes has their own ideas and things that they want to explore and do. So, yeah, Obsidian have found themselves in a neat little box, but I am hopeful for them and I'm hopeful for the future that, with having Josh back on the team to make this is going to be really good. Let's see here. Hi. Welcome. Nice to see you in the chat, supposedly. I am very excited to see what they're going to do. And I also hope like they're going to add the Fallout 4 mechanics of like crafting and scavenging. Um, that just added so much replayability to the entire game in so many different ways. So like the problem that I have with Fallout 4 is that narratively it's not compelling and it's like its narrative is extremely disjointed. It's very odd that you can romance characters there, but you can never talk to them about the fact that your wife was murdered in front of you, um, for what was to you like 8 days ago or like a month ago. Like you watched your wife get murdered in front of your eyes. This was a person that you had a baby with, allegedly, right? That's yours and hers/his baby. They get murdered in cold blood, and like 8 days later, you're like hitting on a journalist, in like some stinky baseball city. Like, it's insane that you can't talk to anybody about the fact that, like, you can't walk there and be like, "Yeah, I remember going to Fenway with my wife or my husband." They just then never give you the chance to do anything like that. Like, if you're gonna make a background for a character, you have to do something with it, dude. You cannot just not do anything with it. Emil should not be writing for RPGs. He just shouldn't be. He like you even if you're talking about writing the next great American novel, like it doesn't take much. You don't have to be some great novelist to know that like if you're going to give a character a backstory, you have to make that backstory matter or be allowed to explore that backstory. And if you were going to give them this backstory that like limits how the character, like the types of stories or characters that you can role play for that character that are like lore friendly or whatever. If you want to be lore, you can play the game any fucking way you want. Play with alternative start. I don't give a shit. But if you're trying to be lore friendly, to be more immersed, if you're gonna give the character a fucking background, do something with it. And they never did. And that's really unfortunate. And even in the DLCs, they didn't let you do anything with it. And then there's like Nuka World. And Nuka World just it's a whole other animal because it's like you go from the Minutemen to being the Raiders, and then there's an unmarked quest to just kill all the Raiders in Nuka World. But if you're the general of the Minutemen and you do that, you don't actually complete any of the quests. Technically, you fail all the quests. But if you're doing that, it's weird because it's like, okay, what is the canon ending of Fallout 4? Well, usually when we consider the canonicity of a Bethesda game ending, they always say like, look, the events of the main story are canon, and the events of the main story in the DLCs are canon, right? Like the DLC main quests are canon, and the base game main quest is canon. Everything else should be up to individual player interpretation. Okay, whatever. I think that's a pretty pussyfoot way of doing it, and that means that your games inherently cannot be designed with a lot of like choice or decision, but you can make up for that in other ways, I suppose. It's not my preference for sure. Um, but again, like Fallout 4 just failed to do anything with even that, where it's like, oh yeah, the events of the main story are canon, and then it's well, if you're the, I guess I mean you don't have to be the Minuteman general, but you are really railroaded, no pun intended, into being the Minuteman general. And then if you're gonna do that, but then you're gonna write a whole nother Nuka World DLC to be like, actually, it's now you're a raider boss. But if you're gonna be the raider boss, why if you're gonna do that, why not also give me the marked quest to say like, no, actually you kill all the raiders because you're the Minuteman general? What? Why is that not a thing, dude? So it's almost like they were saying, like, hey, by the way, the canon ending for Fallout 4 is actually that you side with whom exactly? Who are you siding with? in like, okay, in Fallout 4, you could be like, you could side with the Institute, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Railroad, or the Minutemen. Which of those four factions aligns at all with like Raiders? There's settlement building with Nuka World, so I guess that includes mechanically the Minutemen, but the Minutemen don't give a shit. The Brotherhood of Steel are basically, I guess maybe the Brotherhood of Steel would make the most sense because the Brotherhood of Steel are basically just raiders who have, armor, right? They're the only reason that they're really considered legitimate in any ways because they just have power armor. Any other way, they're just raiders. They go around, they steal food, they're not self-sufficient. They like they are raiders. Um and they'll like, oh, you're not going to give us all your food. Okay, we're going to kill you. So I guess in that case, it makes the most. If you're going to do the Nuka World quest, you should probably just side with the Brotherhood of Steel. Um, Yeah, I really I can't imagine that this new Fallout game will be a disastrous repeat of 4. I just hope that ultimately they are going to make a game that does try to combine the best elements of New Vegas with the best elements of 4. Because 4 genuinely does have really good elements to it, you know? Like, mechanically speaking, there's a lot of great stuff there. I also wonder about the leveling system because the leveling in Fallout has changed so many times now. Where like 3 and New Vegas are the closest to the way that the original games worked since like the soft reboot that 3 did. Um, but then Fallout 4 changed it enormously, and then Fallout 76 changed it again. I doubt it's gonna be the perk card system from Fallout 76 because if you do that and it's like, "Oh, actually, you can change your character's, like, perks and skills at, like, literally any moment," it's like, "Okay, then there's no point in making a new character," right? Unless you specifically wanna re-experience the story, but if there's no consequence to the types of perks that you choose because at any moment you can respec your character, I can't imagine that they're gonna really try and do anything super complicated with the story because oftentimes the narrative choices that you make are sometimes restricted by the mechanical options that are available to you, you know? And I think that's a good thing. To be clear, I think that's a good thing, right? Like if you're gonna play as a sneaky, like rogue type of character, then mechanically speaking, you should have access to things like lock picking or sleight of hand or sneaking things like that. And so if you mechanically can't do those things, then it also makes sense that narratively you cannot role play as that type of character. That just makes sense. So to be clear, limitations like that are good. um but Fallout 4, just I don't know, they didn't it's not a very interesting system. Interesting is the wrong word. Fallout 4 system, I think, would work well in Fallout 4 system is good for an action game. And that's why I think it works decent enough in the scope of what Fallout 4 ended up being. But if you were to have a more intense like role-playing system where there are skill checks and those skill checks exist both in dialogue and interacting with the inanimate world, you're in a dungeon, you need to progress. You have like 3 options. You can either use explosives to blow a hole in the wall, you can use your combat skills to fight through the next fight through like a room of 5 guys, or you can use lockpicking to pick a door. Those are your 3 options, and the type of character that you built is gonna determine which direction you go with that, right? Um, but it doesn't really, when you Fallout 4 doesn't have that at all. There just aren't any quests that have, like, skill checks outside of, like, a small hand like, you can count on one hand how many, like, actual skill checks there are in that game. Otherwise, even, like, speech in that game where it's like, "Oh, you need to convince someone of something," you know, well, you need to persuade them. Okay, well, persuasion is now not a function of a skill, it's a function of your special stat. And I think there is a skill that can affect how your speech works, but again, that skill, or slash perk, are special. Like I don't even understand. Like, how do you classify those? Are your special stats now skills? Like, is strength a skill? Is being charismatic a skill in Fallout 4? Because otherwise, everything else is perks. Like, are you a skilled armorer because you have the armor perk? Is armor a skill? How does that work? Doesn't make any sense. It's all perks. There are no skills in Fallout 4. It's all perks, and that's why you can't have skill checks. You could have perk checks, but they didn't bother to put any of those in for some reason. Probably part and parcel because they gutted the dialogue system so badly. Can you imagine a Fallout 4 where you could talk to characters and have like expertise in things? Even okay, like ignoring even skills, like backgrounds. Like, okay, Nora was a lawyer, Nate is a veteran. Between those two things, they should have uh, different types of opinions on things, right? Or maybe not opinions, but like a different skill sets. So if you're talking to somebody about like government or the way that government should function, maybe Nora should have unique dialogue for that, or be able to have like, you know, unique dialogue options that are like related to your background to be able to tell Sean, like, you're a fucking idiot. You can't run a thing like this, or you can talk to Preston about it, about the political side of the Minutemen, versus if you're playing as Nate, you can talk more about the military aspect of that. That would just make more sense. But again, they never do anything with your backgrounds. It's so weird. It's so weird. I don't understand what the idea behind giving them this like solid set in stone background was. They don't even let you pick through a series of options. And it's like this supposed veteran speech that Nate was supposed to give. That's like the rising action to, like why they were going to leave. It's not even like an action. It's just a way to tell you what's going, like, it's just flavor text. That's all it is. It's literally just flavor. But the opening scroll of the game is from Nate's perspective about how he's afraid of this like nuclear war that's going to come end the world, and that's his speech, but also not his speech. I don't know. It's all flavor, but then none of that flavor ends up mattering in the larger, broader context of the game. It never comes back. I'm really rambling now about that. It's just, oh, the narrative in that game pisses me off. But the mechanical aspect of like you go out, you grab a bunch of shit, you bring it back, you break it down, you scavenge and scrap components, and then you put those components back together to make things that are actually useful to you is awesome. And it provided a level of incentive to actually go out and explore the world and do quests, because if you're, get quests by doing XP, make those quests easier by making cool shit, make better cool shit by leveling up. That's a good gameplay loop, right? Quests give you experience, experience lets you level up, leveling up lets you make cooler shit lets you do harder quests. It all makes sense. If you were to take that gameplay loop and put that into a game like New Vegas that actually has a really compelling narrative design that lets you make decisions, have a character where you can put lots of background stuff into for yourself, that just sounds awesome. And like many of my favorite mods for New Vegas are involve crafting, where it's like trying to make the random junk that you find more useful. Because in New Vegas, it's really easy to not give a shit about carrying capacity because you don't really need that much, like you can always fast travel to your to the Lucky 38 where you can store all your shit that you need, and then you only need to bring with you the stuff that you need for whatever quest you're going to be doing for the duration of that day. And then when you're ready to call it, start like you need a different kit for something else that you're doing, you can just drop your stuff off at the Lucky 38 or whatever. It would be a lot more interesting if Fallout New Vegas gave you a reason to care more about the junk that you had that was like littered around the world, right? Like Fallout 3 gives you the rocket launcher, which is supposed to be your incentive for carrying around tons of junk. But like if you're not using a rocket launcher, then you don't give a shit about the junk. And I guess, like obviously like cigarette cartons and shit like that have good resale value. Weight to value ratio. But New Vegas at least had some crafting in it, but I don't think enough to really justify how much they want you to um engage with it, And there's also no schematics, which was unfortunate that there was like no unique weapon schematics. At least things like survival unlock more, and repair. Repair and survival gave you crafting recipes as well as perks. Hey, whoa, look at that. Did you know that leveling up your character can give you a way to like increase skills that do multiple things? Did you know that? You can do that. That actually existed in a game before Fallout 4, and then Fallout 4 scrapped that in favor of let's have perks. Everything's a perk now. Are we gonna have skill checks in our RPG? No. We don't want we don't want skills in our RPG. We don't want skill checks in our RPG. Oh, you're designing a character? We're gonna make it so that it never matters. Oh man. I I really hope this next game is gonna be like good. I hope it's not gonna be another glorified like action game where it's like, oh look, we're making an action game, but we're gonna call it an RPG, and we're gonna put just enough RPG elements in it that if you don't know what you really want out of an RPG, you'll just kind of walk away feeling generally unsatisfied, but not know why. And that's kind of like the quintessential Bethesda experience now. You know, you go in, you have this game, you have these expectations, you start playing, but you don't really necessarily know exactly what you like about it. You make your character, you play, the story's meh, there are some cool mechanics. You like a lot of the characters, there are definitely compelling characters in Fallout 4, you know. I know like when I played it around 2018 when I finally actually got around to playing it more, or maybe it was even 2017. I can't remember. I do remember this. When I got the game originally, I tried to play it and I thought it was dog shit, and I traded it in for Dark Souls 3. And then like 3 years later, I think I bought it for like 20 bucks. And then I started playing it and I was like, "Yeah, this still isn't great." But then by then you could mod it on console. And I was like, "Oh, actually maybe this is fun." So, you make your character. There are characters that you like to engage with, but none of the way that you really ever designed your character matters. And for that matter, again, like the only thing that really matters at the start of the game is how you take your special. And that's it. I do like how much more limiting it is, but they have to limit how much special you have because that's your skills. Charisma's, persuasion, strength is, melee. Is agility still guns in that game? I believe it's still guns. Maybe it's perception. No, it's not perception. It's is it perception? Fuck, it's been so long since I've played it. I don't know. I haven't watched a Many a True Nerd video in like 6 months, so I forgot how Fallout 4 works. Um, but yeah. So anyways, I at this point I really am just completely rant. This isn't even a rant anymore. It's a total ramble. I really want Obsidian to do a great work, and I think that people who are writing off Obsidian because they didn't like Outer Worlds or Avowed need to take a step back and understand that not only were those different directors, but those games had different priorities than what a Fallout game would have, right? And so just because you didn't enjoy those games does not mean that you'll never enjoy another Obsidian game ever again. You know, the same way that Bethesda making Starfield and Fallout 4 doesn't necessarily mean that they can never make a good game again. It just means that no, I was about to make the comparison, but Outer Worlds and Avowed are both good games in their own respect, and Starfield's just not a good game. I take that back. Bethesda's fucked. It's all downhill from here. It's all downhill from here for Bethesda. But with in regards to Obsidian, just because Avowed and Outer Worlds were games that you didn't like does not mean that you have to write off Obsidian in its entirety. Those were both different directors. Josh Sawyer directed Fallout New Vegas. He's going to be directing this game again. And at the end of the day, like their job is to implement what the game director wants. And then you have varying levels of directors or designers under that whose job it is to figure out how to implement the director's vision. And then when you get into that, then the other developer's job is to basically make it so that the designer can figure out how they're going to do that and then assign tasks to get that finished. And then within that, really, like at that point, it's sort of just like, okay, now it's just stylistic choices and flavor, not to necessarily diminish what any individual developer or designer's contributions to a game are, of course. But you know, I think that distinction matters a little bit. So don't just hate on Obsidian because you didn't like the last couple games. They're more than capable of making excellent games. They've made plenty of amazing games, and they have always, always, always made at least good games, if not amazing. Almost like New Vegas for years, for like a decade, was a genre defining game of being like, this is what an action RPG can be, and it's what it like it set a golden standard for what an RPG should be. And I know, like, I think of like Hugbees as like a contrarian idiot who's always like, actually, Fallout New Vegas sucks because it's not stable on PC. It's terrible. But if you can, like, if you just look at the design of the game, it set a golden standard. And very few games that, like, Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the only games that I can think of in recent memory that has lived up to that golden standard. And arguably, I think actually set a new golden standard. So I don't think that this new game will necessarily be setting a new golden standard. I don't think that it's going to be, some new prodigal son of the Fallout franchise, but that doesn't mean that it won't be fun. That doesn't mean that it can't be good. That doesn't mean that we have to hate it. That doesn't mean it's going to be terrible on release. What it probably means it's going to be, made on probably Bethesda's proprietary software. What it probably means is that it's not going to be stable. It's not going to run well. It probably won't be very well optimized, but at least there will be something worth getting through that for. There's going to be a narrative. It's going to be enjoyable. There's going to be replayability value because there will probably be branching paths and choice and consequence. Romance and RPGs is a very popular thing now. There might be that, and that inherently means that there has to be compelling characters. So there probably will be very compelling writing. Atmosphere is a huge part of that, and every Fallout game that's come out since Bethesda acquired it all those years ago, and what was it, like 2003, 2006 that they officially acquired it? They've always gotten atmosphere down really well. Every Bethesda game or every Fallout game that has come out since, including Fallout 3, and since then has had excellent atmosphere. There are so many good things to look forward to this. I don't understand why, should say that. I understand why people have this, like, attitude towards it, but throw a dog a bone, give them a chance. I think they're going to do something really cool. That being said, we probably won't see this game for years. And that's honestly, like, that's something that everybody's going to have to accept. And as a matter of fact, I mean, there's a good possibility that it comes out before Elder Scrolls 6, which would be insane that we got 3 Fallout games and Starfield before we got another Elder Scrolls game. I think Elder Scrolls Online launched after Skyrim, but that not published under Bethesda's wheelhouse. And it's also, okay, if I'm counting Fallout 76 in there, I guess we can count Elder Scrolls Online. All right. But otherwise, you know, I'm excited, and I think you should be excited too. If you like Fallout, I think you should be. I think you should be happy. I think you should be excited, and I don't think you should like try and Debbie Downer yourself just because you didn't like the last couple of releases. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. If you, I don't know if you're watching right now. Thank you. And if you are watching the VOD, and you got this far into it after all of my rambling, thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope at least the like early section before I started really rambling was valuable to you at least. Um, so those are my thoughts. I'm excited. I think you should be too. Thank God. I really hope that Bethesda does not have a finger in necessarily like how the game will be written. I understand that like they have to have a piece in the like where the game is going to take place and what they can do in the setting. But outside of that, I really don't think that Bethesda should have the finger in that pie. I think that Josh Sawyer should be allowed to have a creative vision. And I think that's fair. I wonder if Chris Avalon will come back for it. I don't know. I'm not going to really dig into that thought too much. It's already been an hour and 40 minutes. So, like I said, if you're watching right now, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. If you could like the video, that always helps. If you enjoyed listening to me ramble, subscribe. I do not have a regular schedule for streaming. I kind of just do it when I feel like it, when there's something to be said. So, there's that. You could subscribe if you want to be notified when I am streaming. And if you want to see more of what I do, just as part of my hobbies, you can find me on Instagram. That's the Mojave Mailman on Instagram. It's basically the same thing as my YouTube username. You can just look me up. And if you do, I really appreciate that. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Take care.